I'm sensing a theme here. How's it going, everybody? I'm McRed2. Welcome back to the channel. And today, once again, I know we're taking on Chen. I know I cover her a lot, but she's got a lot to say. She posts regularly and she's on like 4 different channels. But she decided to throw her hat in the ring on the whole Elliot Page drama. Apparently she takes issue with Elliot coming out as a trans man for some reason, because it totally affects her life at all. But she's calling it the left's war on women? Okay, let's take a look.
Hey guys, welcome back to the show, and thank you so much for tuning in. Today we are going to be talking about the progressive war on women. And I know right now some of you might be thinking, hang on, Lauren, progressives are obsessed with women. They are willing to blatantly discriminate against men in order to benefit women. So how could you say...
Nobody's discriminating against men. We're just not discriminating against women anymore. Well, I mean, we are, but we're trying better. We're trying to do better about the whole discriminating against women for no fucking reason thing, right? But nobody's discriminating against men. There's no war on women. As usual, talking out your ass. But go on.
That there's a war on women. And I know at first it seems kind of counterintuitive, but trust me, this war is very real, and I feel like it actually ramps up every single day. And the first instance of it that I want to talk about is how in some situations it is no longer acceptable and it's actually taboo to even use the word women. And I don't know about you folks, but I think it must be pretty hard to advocate for a group when you're not even allowed to mention that group by name.
So there are some like pop feminists and radical feminists that don't like using the word women because it has the word men in it. Just like the end of the word. But that's not a majority by any measure. There's a very small group of pop feminists and rad femmes that do that. The majority of feminists and the majority of people are perfectly fine with the word women.
I swear, more and more progressives are treating women like Voldemort, okay? They who must not be named. Specifically, J.K. Rowling recently got in trouble with the woke police after making fun of the phrase, people who menstruate.
Yes, because J.K. Rowling is a TERF who hates trans women and refuses to acknowledge that they're women, and even wrote a book about a man who dresses up as a woman and invades women's spaces to kill them, which is a common right-wing narrative that transphobes try to paint to discriminate and invalidate trans women by just calling them men in dresses. Yes, J.K. Rowling is a TERF, and her getting shit on for making fun of the phrase people who menstruate is valid, because it's not just women who menstruate. Trans men can still menstruate even though they're men. So saying women when referring to people who menstruate is not inclusive. It does not include all of the people who menstruate.
Healthline just this week actually published an article referring to women as vulva owners and Lgbt.
Yeah, I mean, there's cringe ways of referring to people who own vaginas or who were born with female anatomy, like vulva owners. That one's kind of cringe. I just tend to go with people who have vaginas. But just because people use cringe language doesn't mean there's a war on women.
T groups have actually come out with entire lists of phrases to use instead of woman.
Pregnant person. How is that like super fucking woke? It's a pregnant person who gives birth. Pregnancy leave instead of maternity leave? Absolutely. Carrier mortality instead of maternal mortality. I don't know about the word carrier. I'm sure there's a better word to use, but yeah, that's more inclusive. It includes trans men, because trans men, until they've had bottom surgery, can still have kids. They still have a uterus. They still have a vagina. They are vagina havers, or vulva owners, if that's the terminology you want to use. But that doesn't, that's not erasing women. That's just including everybody who owns a vagina in that blanket term. Pregnancy leave includes everybody who can get pregnant, not just women in that term. There's no war on women by including more people.
They recommend you use things like person with eggs, person with a uterus, and or egg provider when discussing
Person with a uterus. I like that one.
pregnancy. I don't know about the rest of you ladies, but I actually find those terms kind of offensive. I would much rather...
Why? Why do you find them offensive? How do they offend you? They aren't discriminating against you. They aren't removing you from a group. They're just bringing more people into said group.
Rather be called a woman rather than a person who menstruates. I mean, actually, just referring to women as menstruators sounds like more of a slur than an effort to be...
People don't refer to cis women as people who menstruate. When referring to people who menstruate, they're being conscious of including trans men. They're not excluding you. And if somebody was talking to you, Lauren, face to face as a person, they wouldn't call you a person who menstruates. You're a cis woman. Your pronouns are she, her. You identify as a woman. They would call you a woman. But if a trans man needs to go to the gynecologist, he's not going to want to be called a woman because he's having a period. He'd probably rather be referred to as a person who menstruates when talking about that particular biological function. Other than that, they'd want to be referred to as a man. But these are all medical terms. These aren't things you use in casual conversation. They're either about the topic or being used in medicine.
Inclusive. Progressives always complain about how modern culture dehumanizes and objectifies women, but by reducing women to literally their anatomical parts, isn't that exactly what they are actually doing?
No, it's not, and it's not the same as using a woman in a bikini to sell a burger. Saying people who menstruate to include trans men is not the same as using a set of tits to sell a car. That's what progressives are talking about. Dehumanizing women and treating them as sex objects is what we have a problem with. We don't have a problem with having conversations about periods and including everybody that has them.
And the reason why they're doing this, by the way, the reason why they're trying to introduce phrases like vulva owners or people who menstruate is, weirdly enough, to be more trans inclusive, to be more inclusive of trans women, i.e. people who were born male but...
You mean trans men when talking about people who menstruate? Because trans women don't menstruate. Like, they don't, like, have, like, actual, like, a period blood and all of that. Even if they've had bottom surgery and they have a neovagina, I believe is what it's called. Like, they don't have a uterus, at least not yet. We haven't been able to figure that one out yet. I'm sure it's coming soon, but they don't have a uterus that has to shed its lining every month. But it's inclusive of trans men, so you kind of get it, and yet you still have a problem with it.
But prefer to identify as women. And to me, that just doesn't make sense for at least two reasons. First,
Prefer to
no matter how
identify
trans
as women.
affirming you are, trans people are still a small portion of the population.
Yes, but they still exist. Just because they're a small portion doesn't mean they don't exist, and doesn't mean they shouldn't be included in the conversation, especially pertaining to these topics.
Even if you live somewhere like San Francisco, they are still a minority of people. Changing how we...
Black people are a minority in this country. Yet we should still listen to black people when they say things. We should still be inclusive of black people. Asian people are a minority in America. But they should still be included in the conversation. Trans people are a minority in America, yet they should still be included in the conversation. And one of the larger contributors to the suicidality rate of the trans community is gender dysphoria. And if you're misgendering people or excluding trans people with your terminology that you use, that will make it worse. Changing up your language, which is not very hard, in order to save someone's life should not be something to complain about. You shouldn't complain about potentially saving lives. It's like the whole anti-mask thing. Masks are uncomfortable, but you wear them to save people's lives. Changing up your vocabulary is difficult, but you do it to potentially save someone's life. Just because they're a minority doesn't mean they should be ignored.
We refer to women as an entire sex or gender, i.e. half of the population out there, based on the supposed preference of a small fraction of people.
It's not a supposed preference, and it's not excluding cis women. People who menstruate includes cis women. People with uteruses includes cis women. It's not exclusionary language, it's inclusionary language.
Makes no sense, and it's not inclusivity, it's just pandering. Which brings us to the second reason why, let's face it, this is just dumb. It's that progressives are assuming that trans women find it offensive to link the female sex with being a woman in the first.
We're assuming? You mean we haven't asked them how they feel? Because I have a feeling that of the two of us in this current hypothetical back and forth that we're having here through computer monitors, cameras, I'm pretty sure I have asked trans people what they would prefer I do on any given topic more than you have. I don't know many trans people because they're a minority, sure, but I always try my best to make sure I'm conscientious of them with my language and my behavior to make them feel valid, because they are. And I guarantee you, you don't. So us progressives are not assuming what trans people want. We fucking asked them, and they spoke up when they weren't asked.
First place. And don't get me wrong, I'm sure there are some trans people out there who, when they hear stuff like, ladies, if you breastfeed, and they get all up in arms and say, hey, not all women breastfeed or have uteruses or blah, 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 blah. But
yes, they do. Because that can be potentially triggering to them, especially to their gender dysphoria.
For the most part, don't trans women who actually transition bother going through things like surgery and hormone treatments in order to actually try to emulate and get closer to the biological realities of being a woman? So is it really helping them in any way, shape, or form to try to detach the female signifiers of womanhood from what it means to be a woman?
Yes, it is. Because not every trans woman can afford the surgeries and the procedures and the hormones. And many trans women, especially poor trans women, just transition publicly without undergoing any sort of hormonal or surgical alterations because they can't afford it. And they should still be considered valid.
If trans women didn't care at all about how being biologically female affects being a woman, then they wouldn't bother to do things like have breast implants, go on estrogen. I really do think that for the most part, trying to break down the gender binary.
That's a really stupid argument. If trans women can never be real women, why would they care about getting breasts and bottom surgery? Like, why would they care if they don't care about biology? They identify as women and go through these procedures to present as female because that's what they identify as. They know they were not born female. They're aware of that, but they're trying to present as female because that's what they identify as.
Or deconstruct biological sex isn't even what trans people by and large want. It's more just what a small group of activists want who have happened to proclaim themselves advocates of trans people.
How do you know? Have you interacted with the trans community? I doubt it, because you're a conservative and you don't care about them. If these are things that trans people want, let them do it. It doesn't affect you. It literally has no effect on your life. Why the fuck do you care?
En masse. And the reason why the word women or the subject of trans inclusivity is even an issue is, I believe, because progressives, as much as they like to think of themselves as standing up for women, in reality only stand up for women when women are being pitted against men. I've said it before, but when it comes to social justice,
that's not even remotely true. Progressives aren't standing up for women when they're being pitted against men. Progressives advocate for abortion rights for women. That has nothing to do with men or being pitted against men. A woman having access to an abortion does not harm men. That's just one example off the top of my head. You're making shit up to be upset about.
There is a hierarchy of victim groups, and biological females, cis women, they just don't rank as high in victim points as trans women do. And
This is the oppression Olympics argument that I used to use, which is just complete bullshit. There's no such thing as the oppression Olympics. A few people try to position themselves in a victim status ahead of others for social clout, but those people aren't looked on too kindly by actual victimized groups. But there is no oppression Olympics. There's no hierarchy of oppression where you gotta try and climb the rungs as much as you can. This is bullshit. Everything she said, well, everything she's always said is bullshit. But this particular segment she's doing right now, this is bullshit. I'm just letting you know.
And that's why when it comes to women versus men, sure, progressives will go to bat for women. But if you turn around and introduce a trans person to the situation, all of a sudden, women aren't getting so much help from the left. And this was...
When it pertains to trans issues, cis women are not part of that conversation because they are not trans. When we're advocating for trans rights, cis people are not involved in the conversation. A trans man wanting to be referred to as a person who menstruates, if they menstruate, does not affect me, a cis man, at all. This is a fucking straw man. Nobody's doing this.
Was made abundantly clear when it was recently revealed that actress Ellen Page is actually trans.
It's actor Elliot Page.
And is now going by Elliot Page. So before we get into that...
So that was an ad. I just skipped over it. Sorry, guys. I usually don't cut out, like, video portions, but I'm gonna cut out her sponsorship. There's no point. And I'm not going to shill for her.
Variety recently announced Page, star of films such as Juno and the X-Men series, announced he is a gender non-binary transgender person in a heartfelt social media message on Tuesday. Now, I'm not even sure what coming out as a
So he's trans and non-binary, and his pronouns are he, him, or they, them. That was easy for me to accept. Why is it so fucking hard for you to accept? It's not even like a massively different name. Like, a lot of people struggled for some reason, and I was in that crowd. I've since changed my ways. But when Caitlyn Jenner came out as trans and had difficulty changing the name in their mind from her birth name, but they're wildly different names, so I guess I could see how that may be difficult. Elliot is not that different from his birth name. It's not that hard to keep track of.
Gender non-binary trans person even means, just like practically, but...
They are non-binary and they are transgender, meaning they don't identify with the gender that they were assigned at birth and feel more masculine. Very simple concept, Lauren.
I think that's also how singer Sam Smith identifies as. And as Variety also notes, Elliot Page will continue to play the role of Vanya Hargreaves in The Umbrella Academy, the Netflix series about a family of superheroes. Vanya is a cisgender woman, and there are no plans to change the character's gender, insiders told Variety. If you ask me...
If he doesn't have a problem with that, then why is it an issue for you? If he has no problem playing a cis woman on screen, let him. It doesn't affect you.
This is a double standard and kind of an anti-woman stance to have, because if you recall, Scarlett Johansson, a cisgendered woman, received a ton of outcry when it was announced that she would be playing a trans man. So it's okay for a trans man or non-binary person, I don't even...
So this is vastly different than that situation, because Scarlett Johansson was portraying a trans man as a cis woman, rather than them getting a trans man to play the role in a new role. Elliot has been in this role for quite some time and is just continuing his role as that character that's already been established. They're not going to recast to a cis woman on an established character when the actor who plays that character is still available.
Whatever, it's okay for a trans man, let's just say for argument's sake, to play a cis woman.
No, there's no just say for argument's sake he's a trans man. Just say a trans man. You don't have to throw in the for argument's sake. You're just doing it to be an asshole.
But it's not okay for a cis woman to play a trans man. And
the cis woman was taking on a new role as a trans male character. Elliot is just continuing the role he's been in. It's different. They are not the same.
And I know a lot of you are probably already typing, Lauren, how can this be anti-woman when both Paige and Johansson are women? But you have to keep it.
Paige is not a woman. Paige is a man. Or non-binary. I don't know a whole lot about how Elliot feels because I don't know Elliot. I'm not an A-list celebrity, so I can't have a conversation with him. But as far as I know, Elliot is a non-binary trans man. He's not a woman.
Keep in mind that for progressives, Paige is no longer a woman. She is a trans man. So I know for you and me, this might seem like a bunch of nothing, but really, from the progressive standpoint, they are, in fact, discriminating against cisgender women in favor of trans men. And
no, you're not. God, this is such a... Oh my God, I don't even know what kind of... They are not discriminating against cis women because Elliot is continuing his role that he's been in for years. There is no discrimination going on here. You are trying to paint that as discrimination to invalidate, one, Elliot coming out, and two, progressives as a whole. You're making shit up so that there's an issue that you can complain about when there is none.
And yes, there were a few people who, when Elliot Page was born to the world, said, hang on a second, doesn't that seem kind of strange to have a trans man playing a cis woman? But according to the LGBT lobby and progressives in general, no, this all makes perfect sense. As Variety reports, GLAAD, the LGBT advocacy group, pushed back at the notion that Vanya should be recast with a cisgender female actor. Trans actors can and do play both trans and cisgender characters. I'm sure Elliot will
Yeah, to remove Elliot from his role simply because he's trans would be discrimination. Him continuing his role is not discrimination. You have it backwards.
Continue to be brilliant in Umbrella Academy and many different types of roles in the future, Nick Adams, director of transgender media at GLAAD, told Variety. And even though things like which roles actors can or cannot take and which words outlets can or cannot use might seem relatively trivial, there are...
That's because it is. It doesn't matter. This is a non-issue. You are making a mountain out of a molehill for no reason other than for clicks on the internet because you want to pretend to be outraged about something.
Actual consequences for women's safety when it comes to the progressives' war on women. And here I'm talking about the issue of women's only spaces, which is a pretty hot button.
Here we go. We're getting into it. All right. This is going to be the men dressing up as women to get into women's spaces and assault them argument that all of the TERFs use all of the time. I shouldn't be surprised to hear it from a white supremacist, but yet here I am.
An issue in any progressive circle, but especially so in the UK, which at the moment is essentially just a giant left-wing circle. You see, the practice of segregating certain spaces.
That's because America is incredibly right-wing as compared to the rest of the world, almost. All of Europe is incredibly progressive compared to the United States. Even their conservatives would be Democrats in America. That's how far right we've slid in the last... Well, I want to say the last 4 years, but in the last few decades.
Spaces by gender or sex, like bathrooms or changing rooms, exist for a reason, and that reason is largely to protect women.
No, they exist so that people can change, and so that people can go to the bathroom. If you're doing anything other than changing in a changing room, you're a criminal. If you're doing anything other than going to the bathroom and washing your hands in a bathroom, you're a criminal. Rape is still illegal. Whether it's a man or a trans person doing it, it's already illegal. If you're going to commit the act of rape, the fact that that room is not designated for your gender does not fucking matter. A rapist isn't going to care if it's a women's bathroom. If he is going to rape somebody, a women's only sign is not going to stop him. However, trans women deserve to be in women's spaces because if they're forced into male spaces, like conservatives and TERFs are trying to do, they face the risk of a shit ton of violence and potential murder in those spaces. They're much safer, and women are much safer in women's spaces with trans women there.
From male predators. I'm not saying that all men are predators, far from it, but the truth is that if a man wanted to overpower a woman he found alone in a bathroom or a changing room, odds are he could easily do it. And
he would do it anyway, if he's going to rape somebody, if he is going to overpower a woman, he's going to do it anyway. He's not going to waste the time putting on a dress and a wig to go and rape somebody. If somebody is going to commit rape, they're going to do it regardless of the roadblocks in the way, especially if that roadblock is just a gendered space.
Because men are just stronger than women. But nowadays, if you do advocate for women-only spaces, even if it's to actually protect women, progressives aren't going to be on your side. No, they're more likely to call you transphobic. Because
trans women deserve to be in women's spaces because they're women.
Although for most of us, gender-segregated bathrooms and changing rooms exist to protect everyone's safety and just to make sure everyone else feels more comfortable, in the eyes of the progressives, actually the purpose of bathrooms and changing rooms is to confirm people's gender identities. It may be controversial.
No, it does. Jesus fucking Christ, I am going to take a break from Lauren Chen for a good long while because her arguments are getting shittier and shittier every single video that I do. A public bathroom does not serve the purpose of confirming somebody's fucking gender identity. It's, as you said, for privacy and safety, and trans women are safer in women's bathrooms and women's changing rooms than if they were forced into the bathroom of the gender they were assigned at birth. It is for their safety that they should be allowed in there. It's not to confirm their gender. It's for their safety, just like you said.
Ironically, especially among feminists to say this, but opening women's only spaces to people who aren't women does put women's safety.
They are women. Shut the fuck up. Fuck you.
At risk. And I'm not saying that because I believe that trans women are more likely to attack women than like other cis women. No. The point is that if we say, all right, anyone who identifies as whatever, just come on into the women's spaces, there are men out there, bad men, who will use that rule to their advantage.
There are bad men out there who are going to do that regardless of whether or not the rule is in place. Rape is already illegal. Assault is already fucking illegal. This is a bullshit straw man argument. I hate it. It's used all over the place and it's so vapid and fucking stupid.
Will claim to be trans even though they're not in order to gain access to those women-only spaces.
They don't
and the fact
do
that
that.
Progressives are willing to throw women, including young girls, by the way, who are at their most vulnerable.
Think of the children. This is just an appeal to emotion now. Think of the children. They might have to share a bathroom with a woman.
Under the bus in the name of promoting so-called trans inclusivity, I think just really speaks to how little they actually care about women. And the thing is, this conversation doesn't even need to be an issue of biological females versus trans female, because I know a ton of you out there, ladies, would probably be okay with every now and then an actual trans woman who is transitioned using the same bathroom as you. So you're not.
So a trans woman has to transition, has to actually transition for you to accept them. So I guess fuck poor people? I guess the only people that can actually be transgender are rich.
I'm not saying anyone is welcome to the ladies' room, but if you're actually a trans woman, then an exception can be made. But see,
if you're actually a trans woman, an exception can be made. So you're okay with trans people being in women's then what are you upset about? That's literally all that's happening. Actual trans people. So trans people are wanting to have access to women's spaces, and you're okay with actual trans people, which are trans people, being in women's spaces. So this whole the last 5 minutes of this video has been you yelling about nothing? What the fuck is even happening?
even that type of what I would call a compromise of saying, all right, it's not anyone goes anywhere, but if you're actually transitioning, we can, make an exception, perhaps on a case-by-case basis.
Perhaps on a case-by-case basis. What would your parameters for allowing a trans woman into the bathroom stall next to you and taking a shit in the same room as you be? What are your parameters? At what point on their transition do they have to be for you to feel comfortable, to get that warm and fuzzy inside about, okay, they're really a woman? If trans women are women, If you identify as a woman, you're a woman. That's all that fucking matters. Men aren't dressing up as women to go assault women. They're not doing that. They're just assaulting women. If they're gonna do it, they're gonna do it. Fucking God.
That is also transphobic in the eyes of progressives because it feeds into what they call trans medicalism. Yeah, the idea that a trans person should even need to experience
literally what I just said. The whole what point on your transition.
gender
Jesus
dysphoria,
Christ. Just fucking finish the video.
or
Finish the
medically
video.
transition, or heck, even socially transition. That, in the eyes of progressives now, is transphobic because you're trying to gatekeep who is and who is not trans. So really,
Yes,
it has
you
become
are.
the feminist position now to say that if you are a biological woman, you have no right, and actually you're bigoted if you try to prevent someone with a penis from going into your changing room.
Fuck you. You are wrong. I'm done. I'm done with that video. She is so fucking bigoted and it makes my skin crawl. Jesus Christ. I'm gonna take a break from Lauren Chen. Probably for a while. I know a lot of the videos that I've done recently have been on this fucking woman. That was 11 and a half minutes of just screeching about a non-issue that you're just upset about because you think it's icky and you don't understand it and you're just a hateful, hateful person. I don't even know what to say. I don't even know what to say. Trans people are valid. That's really the takeaway that you need. Trans people are valid. Welcome, Elliot Page. I look forward to your work in the future. Keep up the good work, man. I've been McRed2. Thanks for stopping by. If you enjoyed the video, leave a like, comment, subscribe to the channel. I'd love to have you on the team. You can follow me on my socials here. Follow me on Twitter. Or you can join the Discord if you want to join the conversation. You can follow me on Twitch. I stream Saturday nights and Sunday nights, starting at about 8 o'clock. I do have a child, and it all depends on how bedtime goes, but that's usually when I try to go live. But come hang out there. Love to have you on the team there too. But until the next one, I've been McRed2. Peace.